Welcome back to the GoEngineer channel. I'm Ben, and today's video is a webinar recording covering scenes, appearances, decals, and PhotoView 360. Timestamps will be in the description below, and before we get started, make sure to hit the subscribe button and the bell to be notified every time another great piece of content comes out. Now let's check out this webinar. All right, good afternoon. I'm going to be doing SOLIDWORKS scenes, appearances, and decals. My name is Ben Potter. I'm an application engineer here at GoEngineer. Certified SOLIDWORKS expert. So that's kind of my credentials. And we're going to be looking at first scenes. So we're going to start with going over some defaults, where the file locations, things like that are. Then we'll get into applying a scene, using, you can use your own images, what's the difference between a background versus an environment, and then we'll touch briefly on lighting and cameras. So if we get over into SOLIDWORKS, we have a assembly here that I've been working on, applying appearances and stuff, and we want to go ahead and finish it up and get it ready for rendering. So what are scenes? Scenes, you can think of it as what goes around the model. This is the background, the wallpaper, the behind the scene around it. Where defaults are controlled is system options, and then colors. We have the colors there, and you'll see default appearances as well as default scenes. And I'll show you how to make any scene a default or make any appearance a default in just a bit. Now, your background appearance, you can use your document scene, which is pretty much what the default scene is. You can have it just plain. You can do a gradient, so two colors that'll blend into each other, and then you can even set an image file if you want to. So this is where you can kind of control the default appearances and the default scenes. Say OK on there. Then we have on the right hand side, you have the task pane with the appearances, scenes, and decals tab. And here is where we have all of our default appearances, scenes, and decals. So this is everything that comes preloaded with SOLIDWORKS. Now scenes, if we come over here, a simple right click, and you'll see the set as default scene or add to favorites. So you can click that on any of these and set them as your default, or you can add them to your favorites. Now favorites are stored up here in the heads up toolbar under apply scenes, the little arrow next to it, and these are where all your favorites will be. And you can manage them as well if you want a little quicker way to add and subtract from your favorites list. Next to the heads up apply scenes is the view settings. If you have a certified card, you will have the real view graphics option. If your card is not certified, then you will not have that option, as SOLIDWORKS doesn't want to bog down the computer. You may run into instability issues, so they just remove it if your graphics card is not certified. You also can do shadows and ambient occlusion, which gives it a nice look even when not rendering. So that is, again, in the heads-up toolbar, the little monitor scene here. And this is also kind of a system option level. If I turn these on and off and then move to other parts, they will maintain that through the parts. To apply a scene, it's as easy as drag and drop. So just drag and drop. If I want to, I can pin the task pane, and if I just want to check out some of these, it's real easy to just do that. Kind of like this backdrop gray with overhead light for this scene. So go ahead and unpin that. And yeah, I like the look of that against the assembly. So going over to the left side of the screen, we have the display manager. So that is right here, display manager tab. And it, same pretty much image as the task panes, and you have your appearances, your decals, and then the scenes, lighting, and camera sort of sub tab. If we go to the scenes, lighting, and cameras, we have our scenes, which we set as the backdrop gray with overhead light. But you'll notice there's a background and a environment option underneath that. So what's the difference between a background and an environment? Think of a background as a wallpaper to a desktop. It's pretty much a static image that is just behind the screen. And then an environment is a sphere, a 360 sphere around your model. You can have lighting, you can have different images, you can do 360 actual images, which SOLIDWORKS has a few preloaded. If you right click on any of these and hit the edit scene, it'll take you to the same place. So go ahead and do that. And then here we can see background has a variety of options. None completely blanks it out. You also notice that this means the background is a higher priority than the environment. So if I set a color, let's just make it a random color. There you go. You can do a gradient between colors. You can set those as you want. You can do an image. So maybe I want to, I got a desk here. We'll just upload a office image. You want to stretch it to fill up the full viewport. So now I can kind of, work this into that if I wanted to. Just gives you the option there. And then you can make the background the same as the environment so that they work together essentially. Now the environment, as I said, is the sphere around which your model resides in. Best way to show this is to do a 360 picture. When you click browse the first time, these are all the default environments that SOLIDWORKS comes preloaded with, and there are a lot. But you can also download your own. In this case, I downloaded a kind of a empty office space that I can use if I wanted, if this is something I was looking forward to. Maybe you have a 360 camera, you could take a picture of where you're going to place your model, and then maybe a garage if you're modeling a car, something like that, and then you can upload it here. And if you want to replace this, you could browse to another one, or again, it's as simple as just dragging and dropping a scene back onto our viewport. Under that, in the property manager, we have floor reflections. It's kind of self-explanatory, but you can turn on whether your floor is shiny. If you had a full, maybe a plant layout or assembly that you were rendering that had an actual floor model, you could turn on floor reflections to show that. Floor shadows, again, kind of self-explanatory. Now flatten floor, this takes the sphere and creates a flooring out of it. You can see that if I turn it on, it'll tell you it's going to turn it into perspective mode to help, but you'll see the sphere. So this is kind of what an environment is, and then it is flattening it to create a floor for my scene. And you can adjust the horizontal height as well as the environment size when you do this. So it can be useful in certain situations, but I'm going to leave it kind of at default. Now the aligned floor width, default is the bottom to the lowest point of your model. And then after that, you can do different planes. So the standard 3 planes, you can create your own plane to be the flooring. And this just dictates kind of where the reflections would be, where the shadows would be with the above sections. You can also offset this. So if maybe the desk, if you had something that was mounted to a wall and you knew that it would be, the shadow wouldn't be directly under it, and you wanted to show that, you could by offsetting the floor. You can always reset that pretty easily. Moving over to the advanced tab, this gives you the ability to mess with the floor size and rotation more. In this case, since we don't have like a flattened floor or a specific floor, it's more arbitrary. It wouldn't do anything to really mess with these. But you can, if you have an image as a floor or you have the flattened floor, you can mess with the aspect ratio, you can size it as you need to fit the model, kind of etc. like that. You do have a environment rotation. So as I said, this is a sphere, and for ones with the 360 pictures, maybe it comes in wrong and you need to rotate it so you get a better look. For this one, there's kind of a lighting. So if I move, you'll see that essentially I am rotating my sphere around my model. And you can, whatever you want to get out of it, that's where you can rotate it. And you can do that as well with the viewport here, though it is much easier to adjust it with, within the property manager. Underneath that, you have the scene file. So if you maybe brought in your own background or your own environment and you've tweaked things, maybe you've added a floor, you can save out a scene file and then upload it for reuse later. Or maybe you're going to do many different renderings. You can do that by saving out this scene file. And the last tab is the PhotoView 360 lighting. So this is when you're using PhotoView 360, it has 3 default lighting, which is just the background, the rendering brightness, so how bright is the image, and then it has reflectivity, so how much do all the items have a reflecting light, basically. And you can tweak these. There's a nice way when you're using PhotoView, we'll see at the end, that kind of helps you do that a little easier. It has an environment rotation, and it's the same thing that we did in the advanced tab. So if you see it's set to 223.2, if I go back to advanced tab, it's the same number. So those are the exact same functionality. Go ahead and say OK on there. Underneath, you'll see PhotoView 360 lighting as well as SOLIDWORKS lights. So the 360 lighting default is just what we saw in that tab, those 3: background, rendering, and reflectivity. And then the directional 11 and 12 are considered SOLIDWORKS lights that you could turn on in PhotoView if you so desire. Now, if you right-click on SOLIDWORKS lights, this is where you can add new lights. And they are directional, spotlight, point light, and just basically ambient sunlight. If you want, this is where you can control that. So if we go next to cameras. Cameras, I'm just going to edit this one. Cameras are much like basically a viewport. When I'm moving around and I stop, you can think of that as a camera. It is kind of a fixed location. In the camera, you can see it here. So this is what the camera is looking at on the right side of the screen, and on the left side is the actual camera sort of options and where it is positioned. For camera type, you can have it aiming at a target, which I have now, or you can just have it free floating. You get the standard, if it's aimed at a target, you get a little bit more control and positioning there. If it's floating, you get more free-form functionality, but again, it is just arbitrarily floating around. Numeric controls, that just gives you the ability kind of X, Y, and Z numbering. So if you wanted to move it up and down or around very precisely, you can do it there. You can lock the camera position once you're done editing. So this property manager, so right where you get it right where you want to, and you hit the green check mark, that camera is locked there unless you either re-edit it or unlock it. Then you can target by position or point. So I've selected this middle monitor, and then you could also position by selection using a spherical or a Cartesian point. Camera rotation, you can rotate the camera. Nothing fancy there. Then field of view. So if you have perspective turned off, this is the default typical SOLIDWORKS look. If you turn perspective on, though, you get much more, variables to affect, and you can get, as I move the camera around, you really get actual feels like you are using a real camera. So you can get it good there. And then the last option is a depth of field. So if we kind of rotate over here, you can see these different depth sort of planes. For my model, it's not going to be necessary or wanted. So I'll just turn that off, but you can add a depth of field sort of blurring effect within the cameras. We'll go ahead and say OK. Now when I exit, you'll notice the viewport looks a little weird, and that is from the camera. It is you'll see camera view is checked. If I bring up the orientation menu, you'll see that camera view is also checked. And you can get rid of that by just switching to a different view. So if I want to go isometric, now I'm back into my normal rotation mode. Because while in camera view, the camera is locked, so there is no rotation capabilities unless you actually change the view out of the camera. All right, so that is scenes, lightings, and camera. Next, we're going to look at appearances. So applying appearances, you can apply them to a number of things: the bodies of parts, faces, features, really useful. You can apply just to the general whole entire component. And then mapping, so if you have things like wood, which we'll take a look at, you got grain direction, you can map your part around like that. Then there's some cool tools, nice copy and paste functionality, what it means to kind of apply appearances in a part versus in assembly. We'll see illumination, not so much reflection, but you can affect that within the options. And then we'll take a look at 3D texturing, which is a relatively new functionality that's pretty cool. So hopping back over to SOLIDWORKS, we're going to apply all of our appearances. We need to finish our desk up. So we'll go ahead and open up. This is a multi-body part, and we need to go ahead and finish applying the last few pieces of appearances. So if I hop over, again, I'm in the display manager, and then I went over to my view appearances sort of sub-tab. You'll notice the polished beach. There's a couple of instances of it, and that's because even though it's the same appearance, there are slight variances. Maybe I had to remap it to get the configuration right. Maybe one's applied to a full body, whereas another one's applied just to a face. So any little differences within an appearance will generate a new sort of appearance, and you can click on them to see what they cover. So it's real nice if you're looking for a certain part to kind of affect and control. So to apply appearance, we'll go back to the task pane on the right side of the screen and go to appearances. We're going to go down to organic and then wood, and we can see the polished beach here. And just a drag and drop. That will give us the little pop-up toolbar that will allow us to apply it to all the various capabilities. So I can apply it to the face, I can apply it to the feature, to the whole body. Since this is a multi-body part, that works really well. Or I can apply it to the entire part, every body within it. For in this case, we're going to just do the body because we want the underneath and the sides. Can kind of zoom in here, and I can see the grain direction looks good. Everything looks good there. So we'll go ahead and do the same on the back side here. Apply it to the body. But if we zoom in, we see that the grain direction on this side face isn't correct. It's perpendicular to the actual grain of this piece of wood, if you want to think of it that way. So we need to adjust it, but we'll have to reapply because if we change the entire grain direction, that appearance was applied to the entire body. But face appearances, so appearances applied to faces, have a higher priority than body appearances. So if I come over here, I want to get directly into the property manager. So I can hold the Alt key, that's ALT, the Alt key, and I'll just drag it on and drop it. And that will bring up the property manager at the same time. Now doing the Alt drag defaults to a component level, so I just need to clear it out, then switch down to the face option, and then select that face. And then this brings us to the property manager. So you have two, you have basic and then you have advanced mode. For color and images, the basic and advanced are the same, except the advanced gives you the option to save out your appearance, which I'll turn the advanced on in a second, but don't want to overwhelm at this moment. So from here, we can see selecting geometry, the component, the face, a surface body, a solid body, or a feature. Next, you have your coloration. You can pick it through basically an eyedropper. You have different swatches, grayscale, pastels, standard. You can add or remove color from your swatches. You can add your own swatches if you have those. You have your RGB as well as HSV functionality. So if you want to Google, like I need a specific color, like I want brick red, you can Google brick red and find the RGB code or the HSV numbers, and you can input those here. And then you can decide which display state it goes into. If you go over to mapping, basic mapping is pretty basic. So you have different styles. You can spherical, cylindrical, surface, planar, solid all around. You have different rotations, and then you can have mapping sizes. Kind of, if it's got something, in this case it doesn't really matter, but if you had something like maybe representing a knurling or a grate, how big that image is once applied. But for our purposes, we just need to do a 90-degree rotation to get the grain in the correct direction. Now I'm going to turn the advanced on, and you'll see that mapping gets the basic buttons disappear, and you get full control over how it is going to be mapped. Projection, selected references, you got different offsets. If you want to keep the aspect ratio, you can fit it to the width, you can fit it to the height, and then you can adjust those as you want. You still have your rotation. You can mirror it, so if it comes in slightly, maybe flipped, you can just mirror it across instead of having to rotate it or finagle with it. So advanced gives you a lot more of those options, as also unlocking the surface finish and the illumination tab. So surface finish, we'll see our surface is polished beach, so that is the surface. There's a variety of them here. These are kind of the defaults. And these are not all of them. As you bring in other textured surfaces or appearances, SOLIDWORKS will default to those built into the appearances. And then you have your PhotoView surface finish, which will kind of create a bump map for the rendering process. Illumination, so this is how if you were going to apply something that had lighting, I'll show that in a bit. This is where you can make something glow, and how, or if you have something that's very reflective, maybe of a mirror or a piece of glass, you can up its reflectivity within the illumination tab. Going back to color and images, you'll see that it doesn't really change any, except that you have the save appearance out. So you can create your own appearances here and then save those out as a file to be reused later. So let's say okay. So all the wood is done, but I can see that I've got my handle here. It still needs to be fixed. I can see the brushed copper, but I don't want to have to go back here and find it. So I'll just right click on one I've already done, and in the little pop-up menu at the top, copy appearance. I'll right click on the next one, and then we can paste appearance. I'll do the entire body so it gets those end fillets. And then that copy appearance is still stored, so I'll just come over here and go paste, and then we'll do the feature, which will get both of these. So the feature is a really powerful capability. I've got all these tabs under here, these separators are just little pieces of plastic on my desk. So we need to go ahead and apply that to them. But it'd be a pain to go and do this to all of them. But when I created it, it was a single feature. I made all the circles and then extruded them. So I can just apply the appearance to the feature. And if I select that appearance, you'll see that every one of the spacers has now been applied. On the back here, that kind of, I don't even know what that material really is that they put on the back of like bookshelves and stuff. So I actually used factory floor because for my rendering purposes, it looks pretty close to what the back of my desk looks like. So I'll just copy and paste it. And this is just kind of to show that, you can think outside the box a bit and to think about, if I was going to be zoomed in to this, then maybe I would pick something else. But for my purposes, if I'm doing a kind of a back shot, this will look exactly as I want it to look if I don't have something exactly right. And I could also always take a picture and upload that as my own appearance. Go ahead and save. And here we are. So the last appearance we're going to do is I'm going to open this up, and we're going to apply backlighting to our keyboard. So just grab this. I'm going to throw it apply it to the entire feature. We go over to the Appearance tab, and we'll take a look at this illumination. You'll see that our luminous intensity, it has a value. So this will glow when we render it out. We'll go ahead and save that. And you'll see it represented in the assembly. So the last thing is the 3D texturing. Go ahead and save this. And it's process intensive to do. So I have pre-recorded me doing this so I can cut out the load times essentially as the system is processing. But on the mouse here, I'm going to go in and quickly open it up, and well, actually I've already done one of the 3D renderings to one side of it. So you can see this type of texture. This is just a appearance texture. So there's no real 3D element to it. It's just a high quality image essentially blanketed on that. Whereas on the side here, I have gone ahead and actually applied a 3D texture. It has a mesh to it, so I need to turn off the shaded with edges and go just to shaded, and you can see that knurling that I've applied onto the side of this mouse. And this is it was a surface, and then I applied a feature or an appearance to it, and then used that appearance to generate the mesh. So this is what it looks like before you generate the 3D texture. And the kind of the best way it generates a graphics body, so it kind of overlays over there. And to do this, it's just in the appearance and the task pane, you go to miscellaneous and then 3D textures. You can see there's quite a number of them. If you look kind of like the scroll bar, you see how small it is. Like there's a lot of default ones here. And you just drag and drop it out there, adjust the mapping to your needs, and then you can go to the body that it is associated with. In this case, everything's still surface body. So I locate the body, right click, and you'll get a 3D texture feature in the pop-up. Selecting that turns it on. You select basically which one you want to do, which this one only has one attached to it. I make the mesh real fine. This is going to look like it's going really fast, but every time that I type in something here, it has to process it, and I've just cut out that wait time. So how far it's going to extend out from the surface, and then what is the maximum element size. So once all that is taken care of and loads up, then you go ahead and say OK. And you can see the body there. Now it's this color because that was a default color I was using in the very beginning. Essentially be able to see and help when I was doing the surface modeling. But to apply a normal or the black finish here, it's as simple as doing another appearance, dragging the plastic onto it. But I will get the option actually to set it to the entire graphics body here, just like that. And so now both sides have the knurling applied to it. So that is 3D texturing. Pretty cool. It allows you to create an actual 3D representation of texturing. In this case, knurling for a mouse. Okay, and with that is all of the appearance stuff. So next, we'll take a look at decals. So decals, they're pretty easy. You can use your own images. That's usually the best way most people use decals. You can use, there's masking, which we'll talk about. That's basically having transparent or alpha layers within an image. It has basically a transparent background. You can utilize that. And then you can, we'll show display states, which will apply really through everything, appearances, scenes, and decals, but allows you to use two different decals, or basically replace decals with appearances or scenes within a same part. Think of like a configuration. So if we go back to SOLIDWORKS, you can see I've already applied a decal here to this monitor. If you go to the back side, I've applied a decal to the back, just to give it that extra little bit that really makes it feel like a legit product. But I want to apply the same screens to these two monitors. So we'll go ahead and open it up. First thing I'm going to do is create a new display state, because I've got one monitor that is being copied essentially in the assembly. So I got screen 1, and we'll just name this one screen 2, just like that. And then we'll go back to make sure screen 1 is active. Over in the right, the task pane, we can collapse everything down to decals, logos, and these are just placeholders. So I'm just drag and drop it out, and then I'll browse to my image. Right here, this is screen 1. Open, there it is. And then I'll go straight on so that I can get a good view, just like that. And then this one, I'll leave it no mask. We'll take a look at doing that. But then I want to make sure this is set to this display state. So it should only be in display state 1. Now screens aren't dark unless you set them to be dark, but typically they have a brightness to them. So I'll just hop over to the illumination, which I can do to decals. We'll set a little bit of reflectivity. We'll make it blurry because none of my monitors are glass anymore. They're that kind of plastic that has a little bit of, doesn't really reflect exactly. We'll give it a little bit of luminosity, and there you go. We now have a glowing screen. So if we go over to screen 2, you'll see that that decal disappears. We will repeat that process, so browse to the screen 2 right here. Grab our on, extend it out like that. Make sure it's set to this display state as well. Give it the same luminosity and reflective settings. And say OK. So now as we switch between these, they are good. Now, maybe we want to add a logo here. So I've already gone ahead and I did a split face or split lines to create this, its own little face here. This is a good way to do this when creating a model or a section to add a logo. Because if I applied a decal without doing this, it would have tried to apply it to this entire face. So you can use the split line capabilities to kind of define an area that you're going to then apply a decal to. So we can see it there. This time I'm just going to apply GoEngineer logo. Kind of zoom in, and there we go. Now you'll see that this has a darker background than the actual here, and I don't want that. So this is where the masking comes in. This has an alpha channel. It has a transparent background. So I can say use decal image alpha channel, and you'll see that the background disappears. If the image has a mask file attached to it, which is similar, then you can use that. Or you can actually select a mask color. This is similar to basically you would select that background color and it would mask it out for you. You can always invert a mask. So if you wanted to have kind of think of a deboss sort of thing. And then this one, I want it in all display states because I want it to show up in onto both monitors. And we'll say OK, because it doesn't need to be illuminated. And there we go. We'll go ahead and save this and hop back over to the assembly. Now we need to set this monitor to the correct display state. So I'll right click, go to component properties, set it to scene 2, and OK. And just like that, we have our rendered out, a render ready file. Go ahead and save it. And so that is decals in kind of a nutshell. from here, so that is scenes, appearances, decals. I'm going to show off some PhotoView 360. Again, this was pre-recorded because the rendering process is a little bit time intensive, depending on your settings and everything. It's all hardware based, so if you have a much more powerful computer than I do, then you can achieve quicker result. But we'll take a look at for preview windows, what an integrated one looks like, what a windowed looks like, the scene illumination proof sheet. This is really useful for getting the lighting just right, render region, and then some options. PhotoView 360 is for SOLIDWORKS Professional and higher, so basically Professional and Premium. That's where when you get access to it. It's a good sort of built-in rendering tool if you don't want to use Visualize, which is the big rendering tool that gives you a lot more control and actually a little bit better renders in the end result. PhotoView 360 is still a very powerful rendering tool built directly into SOLIDWORKS. So here we'll go ahead and get PhotoView 360. So this is it's in the add-ins. If you have Professional or Premium, you can turn it on, and then you'll get the Render Tools tab. You can edit, copy, paste, edit scenes, display states, the basic stuff. It's recommended that you do it kind of how I showed you, just on the part levels, and then just use PhotoView for the rendering. If you do a preview, it may ask you to add a camera, even if you already have one added. What it's looking for is looking for the perspective view. So if you don't want to add another camera, you can just turn on perspective view. So integrated preview is exactly what it says. It makes the viewport also the preview window. This is where a good computer with kind of rendering hardware would really shine, because you can make changes and move and thing while being able to see the preview, the rendering, as close to real time as possible. For my computer, it doesn't really handle it very well, so I'll go ahead and turn it off. What I did get to see was that the top wood is pretty reflective, so that's another good thing with the preview windows, is I can go in and adjust that because I don't want it to be reflective. So simply go back, find it, edit the appearance specifically for that part, go to illumination, and I can see that the reflective amount is, it's not 0. I don't think it should be 0. There is a slight reflectivity to the wood, but it's definitely not as reflective as it was, and it should also be blurry. So I'll lower it a couple points, add that blurriness, and then go back to the rendering. So this is kind of the process when you're doing the rendering here, is kind of going back and forth until you get something you're happy with. And the reason I'm closing the property manager is because the options are set for the whole view, and that includes the space that the property or the feature tree takes up. So it's always good to kind of close that when you're in the rendering step, because that will center your model within the viewport. So I can see here, this is preview window. It basically opens up a preview and then renders it out real quick for you. This isn't final render quality, but it's still set to good quality. But here I want to change the background up a little bit. Kind of want to get a darker one to kind of show off the reflectivity and the brightness of the screens and whatnot. So this is a pretty good scene, but I think I want it even darker. So we'll go ahead and apply the black sort of background. And that looks good. So we'll go ahead and kind of continue to the next step. So I'll preview window it again to see how the change in the scene is affecting it, because now that I've made it darker, the lighting and the reflectivity may be brighter. Kind of think of it like a flashlight in a dark room versus a flashlight in broad daylight. It definitely changes how bright something appears. And so that's the case here. The image with the darker background, the brightness kind of overpowers a lot of it. So we'll go ahead and utilize I'm going to get it kind of right where I want it, because when I do this next, the scene illumination proof sheet, that is what kind of it's going to render out. So all of the preview windows and this illumination proof sheet is kind of where I sped up the video, because especially this proof sheet, because what it is going to do is going to render and then iterate on those renderings, giving you multiple options of upping or lowering the brightness. So remember that PhotoView 360 had rendering brightness, background brightness, and scene reflectivity in its options. So I can adjust those as I want here, with more on the right, less on the left. This pop-up is just telling you that you've got certain things that it's going to just kind of estimate. And if you want to, you could turn on full rendering, which will just take more time, but this will get close enough to make me happy. So from here, it's just kind of going around, selecting the options until I'm happy with it. If I hover over, you'll see that's it said 0.0 on reflectivity. So basically, once you get to the bottom, you can't go negative. So there's no reason to select those. But if you do select anything like that, it will actually rerun the render a little bit. Where you can go ahead and just kind of look through this, decide on if we want to add what, and the center one is which one we're using. So bump up the brightness a little bit more, but it still looks a little too shiny. Okay, there's no point in doing the reflectivity anymore, or at least lowering it. So we can go ahead and darken it up just a little bit, just because it is still a little too shiny. But that looks pretty good. You can kind of tell some detail again. You still get a little bit of reflection off of the computer or the desktop from the computer screens. You might want to tweak the background brightness up a little bit, and then we can go ahead and say okay on that. And that will store those settings. So if I do the preview window again, we'll see that change there. Yep, there we go. So yeah, so that's looking real good. So if you're happy with it, then you can kind of move on to that next step. So before we kind of go to the final render, we'll show render region. So this will render just a region within the blue of the box. However, this doesn't scale the box by any means. So it literally, whatever, I will get an image that is that size when I do the render, which we'll see when I do this preview window. But it does allow you to isolate certain items. So if you had something that maybe had a lot more things on it, you could zoom in, but maybe you need to cut it out just a little bit. You have it at the same size you want, but there's still parts within your viewport. Render region allows you to sort of crop down to what you just want. Go ahead and turn that off. And then the options for the PhotoView 360 rendering. Right now we're using the SOLIDWORKS viewport. You can select your different cameras and stuff like that. You can output the ambient inclusion, or you can turn it off. You have the file type. Your preview render quality is good, whereas the final render is maximum. So when you do final render, it will take some time. Then you have things like gamma, bloom to adjust. Contour if you're doing a cartoon render. Then you have direct caustics and network rendering as well, if you have that set up. So those are the options. And once everything's good, you just go ahead and click on Final Render. This will pop up the preview window, which will essentially render it for you, but it is now doing the final render. This can, depending on if you have it set to maximum like I do, this basically can double or triple the time that it takes to finish the render. So again, I've sped this part up. And then once it's finished, you'll get the final render pop-up, which we can see the image here. You can see also some past renders that I've done on it, different models, different backgrounds, trying different things. And then from here, we'll go ahead and save it out. It'll default to a JPEG, I'll just call this desk render. I think that'll be a good name. And then I'll save it onto my desktop. So then we can go ahead and close that. Go ahead and close the preview window. I'll minimize SOLIDWORKS. And then I can open up that desk render and kind of take a look at it there. So if we needed to maybe go make any changes to it, I could, but this looks like a pretty good render to me. So that is PhotoView 360. That is the built-in rendering capabilities within SOLIDWORKS. Pretty potent, pretty powerful. Got a lot of nice little features into it, especially that proof sheet to get the illumination down just right. And with that, that is the end of everything I've got to cover today. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this webinar, check out our website, goengineer.com. Links will be in the description for access to professional training, upcoming events, upcoming webinars, and much more. If you found this particular video helpful, do give it a like and leave a comment below if you have a topic you'd like us to cover. And don't forget to subscribe to be notified when more great content comes out. Until next time, keep on modeling.